Hi everyone, welcome to Tuesday Night Live. I do hope that you can join us. I do hope that you can be here with me, and tonight's subject is We Are the Ones We've Been Waiting For. I chose this subject because I met a friend of mine the other day in Rangiora, and she's a wonderful lady, and she's a wonderful healer, and she's just a beautiful soul. And John and I are working on the possibility of a project to where I want to interview people and talk to them about their work and how they got to be doing what they're doing. And she's one of the people I really wanted to invite to come and sit down with me and have a conversation, which we could then record. And her reaction to that was one of almost kind of shock and horror. She was flattered that I wanted her to do that, but the other side of that for her was incredible fear about putting herself out there. We talked about that from the perspective of, past lives, what's happened to us in past lives, and we briefly touched on that. But I want to address that a bit further and look at how far we've come and how far we have to go. Now, one of the things about natural therapies and energy healing and being a holistic practitioner is that it's not new that we are doing this, but it is new that we are able to do this in such a public way, that I'm able to sit here and have this conversation with you and talk about what I talk about to you about reincarnation and the soul's journey and life after death and life before life and natural therapies and so on. There was a time in history when if I had done that, people would have been bashing the door down behind me right now, and soldiers or whoever would have been coming out and dragging me out of here, and goodness knows what would have happened. Terrible things would have happened, and that has happened to me, and it obviously happened to her too. And I've worked with clients in the Light Path Journey therapy process who have been so stuck and so still living in that fear from previous existences that they couldn't carry out their holistic therapies. They wanted to, but there was this huge barrier, and they didn't know what it was until we went in there and discovered this life where they had been operating, being a herbalist and curing people with herbs, and the church belief at the time was that they drove out the demons, that was heresy, and that they were evil and witches, and it was witchcraft, and so they could keep control that way, and therefore that person was then put to death, not before terrible things had happened to them. And those memories are still very strong in many of us who are stepping up now and saying what we believe and what we know to be true for us, and being really true to ourselves and sharing our modalities and our therapies and our energy healing and our wisdom and whatever it is that we are remembering and bringing through again. So, we chatted briefly, and it's like, come on, be brave, let's be brave. God, I'm scared every night I do this, for exactly the same reason, and I feel anxious, and I've said this to you before, and when I finish, I sort of go, oh, I've done it. What's going to happen with that old feeling that somehow that's going to happen to me, that what happened before. And for some people, it's still very real. It still goes on, that they are called quacks and they are shunned and treated really badly by people who are in orthodox fields or just people in general, people who have religious beliefs, that somehow they are not good, they're evil, they're witches, and so on, even in this day and age, which is, it's understandable considering people's belief systems, but when we are doing what we're doing, are we doing harm? I suppose that's the thing, that somehow it's believed that we're doing harm. We Are the Ones We've Been Waiting For is a title of a piece by Thomas Banyaka Senior. It's the final line of a powerful piece of wisdom, and I've got it here over on this side, so I'm just going to look over here. By Thomas Banyaka Senior, 1910 to 1999, Speaker of the Wolf, Fox and Coyote Clan, Elder of the Hopi tribe. And I wrote a blog a few years back, and it was called I Dreamed of a Time. And I thought that I would take this opportunity to read it to you because it's really important. It was important to my life at the time, and it's important to me now. And you can go onto my website and you can read the blog. I've put the link up on this little description here. But I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really important. And it's not just about holistic practices, and it's not just about energy healing and us and herbalism and us being able to do that. It's about many things. It's about belief systems. And I'll read this to you and then I'll share something with you. I'm going to read it now. And it says, when I read these words, I feel a resonance deep inside me as if I've been spoken to by something very ancient and powerful. The words speak to me across time and space as if I was calling to myself from all my lifetimes to remember why I had been born, lived and died, and why I'm here now. To incarnate here is a courageous decision made and acted upon by all of us. It is one of the many leaps of faith we consciously make along the path of our soul's journey. Why do we make this journey, you may ask? Because we can. Because it is how we learn and grow. And each day of our lives is an act of courage and determination. I know now that I was going to need a lot of courage to live in this life that I had chosen. It would take everything I could muster to get through the early years, and what got me there was my dream of a better life. And I just wrote in there, I have a dream. That was Martin Luther King, and he had a dream of equality, and he was so passionate about that. He believed in that so much that he came here to deliver that message. And of course it cost him his life. And so, but he was never afraid. Well, I'm sure he must have been afraid at some stage. We're all afraid. But that didn't stop him from doing what he was here to do and what he really needed to do. I'll continue on. I dreamed of a time as a child when my home would be free from violence and we could get some help, where society wouldn't turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the cries of women and children who were living in fear of violence and abuse with nowhere to turn and no one to listen. Secret keeping was part of our survival kit, as was being vigilant and playing small. Thankfully, the time has come where we are consciously more evolved and can seek help, understanding and recognition to change our lives should we choose to do so. And here in New Zealand, those who need assistance can now get benefits to help support themselves and their children. There are safe houses for women's refuge. It doesn't stop the violence. It hasn't stopped domestic violence, but it has certainly given women and children there's a place to support them and people to support them so that they can go there. And my Mother's Day, there were no benefits, there was no women's refuge, there was none of those things. And so, she stayed probably a lot longer than she should. There is recognition for this situation and help available from so many sources to assist them to leave their battered lives far behind. And perpetrators of violence and abuse can seek help too to learn a new way to live their lives in a way that doesn't harm those closest to them, should they choose to. I dreamed of a time when women wouldn't have to hide in shame if they had a child out of wedlock and give that child away because society frowned upon the woman and the child, but never the man. I dreamed of this because by the age of 17, I'd given birth to 2 beautiful girls and given them up for adoption. And I dreamed of a time when my mother's words wouldn't ring in my ears that after what I had done, no decent man would want me. So I chose my relationships accordingly, until I finally saw the love in myself, for myself, and the consciousness of society had changed enough that my shameful actions were no longer such a terrible moral crime. And yet, some years ago, I found myself being speaker quite often at women's conferences, National Council of Women, Optimists, and a few others. I can't remember which conference it was, but I was one of the guest speakers, which was just alarming because I always felt like such a fraud being there. And it was the first time, it was out of my mouth, it was the first time that I had actually ever said anything publicly about having a child at a very young age and adopting those children out. And I outed myself. I didn't mean to, And I didn't not mean to somehow. I don't know. It was an unconscious thing. I just said it. And the whole tone of the room changed. Now, these are all women. And the whole tone of the room changed very quickly. I realized that I'd done something really big. And what happened after that was that there were a couple of women who come up to me and said, "Oh my God, you were so brave to say that. I had a child too, and I had it adopted out, and I just never talk about it to anybody. I've never told anyone." And I was just like, oh my goodness, you know, and we had a hug and we just understood what each other was going through. Now, there were some women from my town that I live in here, and who one in particular who always stopped and talked to me and had a chat and said hello. I saw her a few days later in the street, and she crossed the road to get away from me. I watched her. I saw her. She looked straight at me. She saw me, and she deliberately crossed the road. And from that day onwards, she hardly ever spoke to me. And I just thought, gosh, you know, here we are. That was in the 90s. And here we are in this modern day and age. And yet still there is that stigma attached to people such as myself from other women. I mean, that was just astounding. The stigma came from other women. You know, women who I would look to for support and encouragement and I don't know, just to be validated as another woman. But no, that wasn't going to happen. And so, you know, now I talk about it now, and if anyone ever do that to me now, I just go, oh, well, you know, that's on you, not on me. But yeah, so some things have changed, and they've changed dramatically, which is really good, but there are still those pockets and beliefs and judgments that are happening there that we need to work on just through awareness. I wrote here, I said, women of today are having children alone and out of wedlock. They're raising their children without the prejudice of the masses, and surrogacy is an accepted part of our lives. Thank goodness for that. Even our own Prime Minister is doing that. Look what she's doing. What an incredible example she is. The time has come now to heal that gaping wound in my soul and the souls of other women and children who have carried the burden of society's judgment. I have thankfully been reunited with my daughters who are grown to become beautiful women. I dreamed of a time when we could learn to use our power with love, having learned very early on in this lifetime what it was like to live in a powerless situation. I decided that being powerless didn't serve me, and I was not going to live a powerless life. I needed to be courageous, even though I felt scared to death. And living a courageous life is not just about going to war or doing dangerous deeds. Rather, it's having the courage to stand up for something that needs to be changed. It's about having the passion and the vision to imagine a time when acts and beliefs that cause harm to ourselves and others would be brought to the light and will no more hold us prisoner to those who perpetrate them. To live a meaningful life requires courage and belief. And I'm reminded of the saying as I wrote the blog, but I'm reminded of the saying, and it's been accredited to Mary Ann Radmacher, so I hope that's who wrote it. She said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Courage is a quiet voice at the end of the day that's saying, I'll try again tomorrow." And that's very true, that to bring in change, to bring about change requires courage, whether it's personally for ourselves, whether it's in our society as a whole, whether it's across the world, it requires courage. I dreamed of a time when there would be no more abuse of power over children, where children had a voice. I dreamed of a world where abuse of children by those who had power over them was no longer acceptable, and that those who chose to prey on the innocent would be brought to justice. That time has come as we witness the bringing of the light to the abuse of children, and the world is horrified, and so it should be. I dreamed of a time that would allow myself and other like-minded souls the freedom to embrace our spiritual beliefs without fear of death or persecution. I dreamed of a world where there was equality of opportunity for everyone, a world where we were free to express our true selves without fear of reprisal. This is still a work in progress, with huge inroads being made around the globe, and long may it continue. Change is about our willingness to want a better life, a more happy, healthy and spiritual life. It's being more conscious of our intentions, how we act upon them, and how that affects the consciousness of the all that is, that's everyone and everything. It's challenging enough to get through each day, but to effect change, we must step up another notch and live with passion, act with purpose, and be mindful of our thoughts and feelings and conscious of our intentions before we act upon them. For every action, there's a consequence. The intention behind that action will determine the outcome of the consequence. Some call this karma, the law of cause and effect, but that's subject for another time. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it. For me, leaving this world a better place when I depart is not just about a clean, green earth free from pollution. It is about how I lived this life and the impact my actions and intentions had on all things I came in contact with. I've had to do a lot of soul searching, for my actions have not always been saintly. I've hurt others by my selfish, fear-filled ways. I believe in reincarnation, that I've lived before this lifetime and that I will live beyond this one. Maybe in all our lifetimes, our desire for change caused us to act in a way that has brought about the changes in this one. I really hope so. And I want to leave behind a world where we're more aware of each other, where we take responsibility for ourselves, and where we don't have to compete with each other for power and use our power with love as opposed to our power without love. Both are equally powerful. And that to me is a sign of spiritual maturity. I'm heartened by the opening of our hearts and minds to the infinite possibilities that are available to us as we see ourselves and each other as souls on a journey together through time and space. And I'm so pleased that what I could only dream of has in most part become a reality. And therefore, it was all worth it. There's no better time or place than now to embrace our spirituality in our own unique way. And there is still so much more to do. We must seize the day where the idea whose time has come, and we shouldn't hold back from the pursuit of our truth, that we are spirit, being human, and that we've lived before in many times and places and will continue to do so. We are our own ancestors, we will become our own descendants, that no one sits in judgment of us when we die, that our natural state is love and peace and joy and forgiveness, and that was on display in abundance in the past in Christchurch City, as we responded to the mass shootings in our local mosques, and as we all came together throughout the earthquakes, as we come together when people have tragic times. And I can remember many years ago, it was in 1991, and there was a gentleman here who had died in a tragic accident, and his wife had cancer, and she was terminal, and they had young children. And many of us, there were people who formed this group to help raise money for those children, and I was doing theatre at the time, so I got a whole group of people, the town together, and we did a concert, put it together in 5 weeks. It was so exciting. It was such a good feeling to feel helpless at a time when something so tragic had happened, to be able to come together and do something so positive. Not all the comments about it were positive, which was really interesting. You know, people were like, oh, well, you know, there's more people who are more deserving. And my answer to that was, well, if you know who they are, you go do something about that. You create something for them, just as we did for this family who really, really need us right now. And that was a really heartwarming thing to do. So we don't need to do great big world things all the time. We can do small things within ourselves for each other, and we can do them for ourselves, and we can do them for our communities and people in our communities. I believe we don't have to go through anyone to find God. The is, or whatever name you may give the divine consciousness to which we all belong. We're already in direct contact with whomever we need to help us on our journey. There are no need for trappings to express our divinity. We're all we need. Our arrival into the earth plane was humble. The only physical trapping that we had was our body, and we leave that behind when we depart. What we do leave is our imprint on everyone and everything we come in contact with. Since we first took shape on the earth plane when faced with adversity and strife, we dreamed of a time when that will not be so. Acts of power without love are no longer acceptable in our family, our community, our country, or the world at large. If enough people become willing to be open-minded and raise their awareness of themselves and others, then change will happen without violence or force. And all it takes is one person to ignite the flame, then pass it to others who have the courage to light a torch from it and pass it on to others with love and hope and faith. So it's time to stand in our power and embrace the lives we have chosen, for we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the voices in the hearts of those who can bring about change, and it's never too late to make a difference. And this is the words of Thomas Banyaka Senior, where I began. I found this piece many years ago. I wrote the blog in 2016, and I know I found it, probably a couple of years before. And when I read it, as I said in the beginning of this, it's just something just touched me. It was like it just opened up my heart. He says, you've been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go and tell the people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in the right relationship? Where is your water? And know your garden. It's time to speak your truth. Create your community, be good to each other, and do not look outside of yourselves for a leader. There is a river flowing very fast. It's so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, and they will try to hold on to the shore, and they will feel they are being pulled apart and will suffer greatly. Understand that the river knows its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is in there with you, hold fast to them and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to an end. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a manner sacred and in celebration. We are all about to go on a journey, for we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I think that piece was just so profound. And I realized when I read that, you know, he was talking, well, for me, it was like he was talking to me, and he was saying, you know, come on, Owen, you know, you've wanted this in so many lives that you wanted to do this work, and you wanted to step up, and you wanted to be able to do this without fear of losing your life. Well, here it is. This is the time for you, what you've been waiting for, and what you wished for, and the time, and you dreamed of that time, and here it is. And Kate says, hi Kate, hi Belinda, hi Carolyn, hi Joe, and hi to my hubby John. And anyone else who's out there, pop in and say hello. And Solomon, hello Solomon. Kate says, I like your topic. Can you do something around tips discussion on dealing with covert and obvious bad behaviour so we can stay in a good space and remove lower vibes where possible? Okay, Kate, here you go. All right. You're right. A friend of ours once told us, was it John, you're either going towards love or you're going away from it. Okay? Someone's either using their power with love or they're not. Either you're using your power with love or you're using your power without love, and both are equally powerful. And that's what we have to look at. When someone's behaving badly, there are two things that we are dealing with. We're either in fear or love, and everything is a derivative of those. People who are frightened, angry, abusive are fearful. They're frightened. If you delve into that person, if you could go inside them, if you could step in and go way, 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 way in there, you would find that there's this frightened little person in there. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to stay there and put up with that bad behavior, but it just helps us to understand what's really going on for them, and that somewhere along the line they've shut themselves down and shut themselves away in there, and this kind of alter ego is living their lives. And we can all do that. I've done that, you know, self-destructive. I've upset people, I've hurt people, I've driven people away. I've had some great people in my life, and I've just done things that have really upset them, and they've gone, and rightly so, they should have. And that taught me something really important. And I don't know if you've seen Joaquin Phoenix's acceptance speech for the Oscars, but it's really wonderful. I love what he says in there, that, you know, that he's behaved like a real ass at times. And there were those who gave him a second chance, and he's just won an Oscar. And he was so humble about that. And he talked about kind of what I just talked about now. And I think that that's the most important thing, is that we can't be responsible for what anyone else does, only ourselves. If we've done something that hurt someone, then we need to go and say we're sorry. We need to go and make amends for that. It doesn't matter whether they accept our apology or whether they don't, but we need to actually reach out and accept that we have done something not good. And that's how we learn. And when we go home to spirit, we don't sit in front of this great God on a throne and he goes, well, you're good and you're not, and you're going to do penance and you're going to go get a set of angel wings. we actually sit and we look at the life that we have lived, and we feel everything from everyone else's perspective. Ouch. Imagine that. Ow. You know, to have to sit there and knowingly and openly be prepared to look at everything that we have done, good, bad, or indifferent, and know that we had another choice, but we didn't take it. And so, okay, so if we didn't know better, we can look at that and go, I didn't know better. I didn't know that I had an alternative. I didn't know how to behave differently. But if we did know better and we still chose the dark path, then we have to live with that, and we have to look at ourselves in the mirror every day. I think that, well, I can only talk from my own personal experience. I can't speak for anyone else. But having grown up where I did in the life that when I was a child until 11, with a father who was extremely violent, and he was a very screwed up man, you know, I think that if he was today, I hope he would get help, and he was an alcoholic as well, so it exacerbated when he was drunk. What that taught me, strangely enough, was unconditional love, is that I still loved him. He was still my dad. I still loved him. I could still see all the good things in him, even though I was terrified of him, and I lived my whole life not feeling safe. I still loved him. It didn't mean that I should stay with him, and the violence was exacerbating. It was growing, and Mum took me away, which was, you know, I don't know what would have happened if she hadn't to her or to me. But it taught me love, that to love my dad, even though he was doing that, but that doesn't mean I should stay there and put up with it. If anyone out there is in an abusive situation, an abusive relationship, you need to get out. That's it. You need to get out. Don't stay there. Move. Get away. Seek help. Ask someone. There are plenty of people out there now who will help you, because you don't need to do that. You don't need to stay there. And if you have children and those children are growing up in that abusive situation, then that's not good for them. And if you can't think about yourself, you have to think about them. Now, if I get into trouble for saying that, I don't care. That's the truth of the matter. And if anyone is bullying you, or you're living with a narcissist or a misogynist or whatever else, whether they're men or women, then you need to get away. Because I'm sure that you've tried everything you can to make it okay for them. Now, how does this relate to what I've said? If we go back in time and we're gonna rewind the reel here, the real tape, and we're gonna go back to the Dark Ages. I don't know how far back do we go? Or, I don't know, 1700s, 1600s, 1800s. I don't know. Go back, and we look at what behaviour was back then and what was acceptable, and what changed that behaviour. How did that not become acceptable anymore? How is that evolving and changing to what we have now? Now, there are still some of those people who think like that now. Why is that? Well, my understanding from the work that I've done for myself and for my clients and the research that I've done is that, you know, those people have brought that energy with them into this life and those belief systems, because they need to live it out now and see that it actually doesn't work and it's not good. Okay, they need to try it out in the modern world and see how it goes down. And that's why we have this whole Me Too and all these other things that are coming up now going, no, you can't do that anymore. That is socially, morally, and consciously unacceptable. And so it should be. And the only way that we're going to make a difference is if we speak up. We can't go around being rude and nasty and shouting and yelling and hurting other people. But we certainly can start with ourselves, and then we can go and support other people to make the changes in their lives and stand together. I taught a course a few years back, John and I worked on it, called Conscious Living, and we had a group of people who came along, and it was interesting what came out. It was just a group of people, and we got together over a long period of time, and we talked about our stuff, and I talked about my stuff, and they all talked about their stuff, and we all brought our stuff out in the open, and we would bring along each week what had gone on and things that we wanted to talk about. It was so interesting, and it was so enlightening to be amongst a group of such brave souls who who were really wanted a different life. They really wanted to change the things in their life, and they all had different things that they brought to the group. Things from their past, things from their present, and things that were going on with their family, with their work, with their relationships, with their own belief systems, whatever they were. And we all learned so much from each other by just being in that space and holding that space for each other. And we all learn to trust each other and grow from each other and with each other. So if you have an opportunity to do that, and that's kind of what this is, really. It's kind of like conscious living. It's just, here I am, I'm rambling on, write your comments in there, make a comment, say what you want to say, and keep it nice. Send me an email, drop me a message on Messenger, let me know what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about it badly enough, come sit here beside me and we'll have a discussion and we'll talk about it together, okay? And let's see what we can do to help change things for the better. You know, the whole thing about I want to come back here another time. Never thought I'd say that. I want to come back here and I want to look at it and go, wow, you know, we are the ones we've been waiting for, because it will have changed again. From that time in the 70s when I had my girls in 74 and 76 to now, the change is profound. It's just unbelievable that the consciousness, the change and the growth in our consciousness. When you look at what's happening for women, back there I was a shunned woman who had to be hidden away. I had to go away to have my children. And I could never speak about it. We never talked about it afterwards. It was like it was a topic that was never brought up in my family ever. And I was never allowed to say anything to anybody. So you can imagine, as I said in the beginning, when I outed myself in front of a group, a whole national conference of women. And now here I am talking to you about it, to the world about it, to God knows who's watching, who's not saying they're here, or is going to watch this in the future. And the relief that I feel, and I feel so proud of these girls. I feel so joyful that I can actually, you know, talk about them, because I loved them then and I love them now. I always loved them. To not be able to talk about someone that you loved so much for all those years of their life, nearly 40 years of their lives, and then finally be able to acknowledge them and recognize them and say out loud how you feel, it's just profound. But life wouldn't, you know, I don't know what would have happened to me back then if I'd done that. If I was given my, you know, we always say if I'd given my time over, I would do something different. Well, that's the really beautiful thing about reincarnation, is it's kind of like it's a gift to us to do things differently. That when we know better, hopefully we do better. That when we become more aware, the responsibility is huge. Ignorance, they say, is bliss, and you know, it is to a degree. But when we know better, we have to do better. The responsibility level, the ability for us to respond in a more positive, healthy, and I will call it spiritual way, becomes greater. And the expectation of ourselves that we should is greater too. If anybody's got any comments, please write them. I'm more than happy to see what you've got to say. I'm just looking at my notes. I always make lots and lots of notes, so I just want to look and make sure that I've actually covered everything that I wanted to do. I think I have, which is really cool. I just sort of got something today. It said, you know, about technology, that I'm being told that technology is kind of slowing down, that we're not getting these huge breakthroughs like we were in technology, and you might know differently. But the thing that's really interesting from that point of view is that our consciousness is growing. So as our technology is kind of just slowing and growing slowly, as opposed to doing that, it's kind of going slowly like that, our consciousness is accelerating. It's like, it's not even going like that, it's going like that. It's just, and it's expanding out, huge. It's kind of expanding in all directions. And that's why, you know, I'm looking at the list of people here and people who are saying they're here. And I know just from looking at you, the people who are here, that you are doing that. And I bet you've been through some real struggles because of it. Because on one hand, you've got all this feeling that you want to expand and expand and expand and expand and grow into this new awareness that you have. And you're not even sure what it is, because I'm not at times either. But there's still this kind of heavy weight that's here, that's kind of like the, you know, oh, can't do it too far, we've just got to keep going here. The daily grind and all the other stuff that goes on. It's like, oh, come on, just get on with it, will you? Whatever it is. Because if we, in our spirit form, we can think it and it is. All right? That's what happens to us. We think it, it's there. We think it, we're there. Now that sounds like science fiction, but it's true. It's what happens. And if we think about the internet is actually a direct indirect correspondence to this growing consciousness. So here I am talking to you, and you're sitting there, and it's reaching you now. There's no, might have been a bit of lag if you've got a slow connection, but here I am, I'm right here, I'm saying the words, and they're reaching you now. Now we've had that by telephone for a long time, but not by picture. And that we can send a text, it's there. We can send a message, it's there. As we think it, it can go. And that's what we can do naturally as souls. That's how it works. And so in that sense, technology is gone, yeah, well, this is great. We're going, yeah, we like this. This is really cool. And we want more of this. The thing is that we also have to be mindful that, yes, we do want things to happen faster, but we don't always have the consciousness to be able to deal with it. And if we get everything too fast, we'll just have nervous breakdowns. We won't cope. I don't know how many of you listening or watching this have at times felt like you're having a nervous breakdown, like you're losing your mind. You're thinking, what is going on with me? What is actually happening to me right now? I don't understand this. I don't know. I know something's happening, but I don't know what it is. And for me, that has been because my vibration has raised, my energy has sped up, and I've got all this feeling, but my world is still, I have to get up, I have to brush my teeth, I have to comb my hair, I have to, all those things that I have, those mechanical things that I have to do just seem like such a drudge. And they seem like such a weight for me to have to do, because I want to be able to work at the speed of light, and I can't. That's the best way I can describe it. I hope that's not too complicated for you. So, you know, from We Are the Ones We've been waiting for, this place right now is what I dreamed of in 1970 when I had my kids. The light for women now, and for men, there are men out there too who are in abusive situations. It's not just women, but for people, let's say people and children, there is help available that wasn't in my childhood. And so in that sense, we've come a long way in a short space of time. And I hope that as we continue to say that, no, this is not good enough, we won't tolerate this anymore, there has to be a change of thinking here, a change of behavior, a change in consciousness here. And we want that, and we demand that, and we expect that. The more that we do that, the more things will change. You're going to say something, sweetheart.
We now have a law
that
allows us 10 days paid leave to get out of an abusive relationship.
That's true. John just reminded me. He just said we now have a law that allows us 10 days to get out of an abusive relationship. Paid leave. Isn't that interesting? We have a law that says that. Goodness me, that's huge. And I looked at dear old Philip Schofield, you know, the other day, who came out and said he was gay, and you know, and you could see what's happened is there's obviously, you know, a lot going on in his family, and some of the things people said was just like, oh my goodness, are you from the Flat Earth Society? You know, there's this man, he's bearing his soul to the world and saying, this is who I really am, and this is not easy for me. this is not easy for me to say this, but I'm telling you because it's going to come out, and I'd rather me tell you than anyone else. And he did that, and so many people went, yay, good for you, we're so happy for you. And then there were these other people that just went, and were just so abusive and nasty. And I think, gosh, that must really threaten their belief system for him to do that they like the spirit Philip Schofield that they saw that fitted their mold. And when he goes, well, actually, I'm actually still Philip Schofield, but I'm gay, then all of a sudden they're like, he's hurt his wife and children, how dare he, and start being nasty about him. And I just thought, gosh, yay to those people who went, good for him, and for those people who didn't, what's that about for them? What is in that for them that they would do that? And I think that that's a risk that we run when we step up. When I was doing directing shows in the 80s and 90s, as I may have told you before, I was really young when I started directing, and I learned pretty quickly that there are those who will just say, oh, it was wonderful, we loved it all, and it was so good. Oh, I just think you're wonderful. And I'll be like, oh, thanks, that's really great. And then just as quickly as that would come along, someone would come along and go, bang, and I called it brickbats and bouquets. I would get a bouquet on one hand and a brickbat on the other, and I'd be like, well, I don't know what to believe. Do I believe them, or do I believe them? And so I learned not to believe anybody. I didn't even invite critics to the shows in the finish. I didn't invite an opening night critique. I didn't read anything that was written about the show. What I did was that I knew myself when I had been slack, when I'd missed a piece, when I hadn't listened to myself, and I would watch it play out in front of me night after night after night. And I go, oh, this is torture. And I would know. And so I learned to listen to that part of myself and know when I was doing something really good, when I'd done it from the right place, not good or bad, but just when I'd done it from the right intention, when I'd listened to my inner voice, and it would shine off the stage at me. And then there were those places where I just go, oh, I didn't listen, I just got caught up in something else or someone else's drama, or paid attention to someone else's thinking or ideas that didn't serve the work as a whole, and it would show up and be glaring at me in brilliant Technicolor and spotlights for, like a week or 2 weeks sometimes. So, I learned early on brickbats and bouquets. And in this work too, I get brickbats and bouquets, as I'm sure a lot of you do here too. If you're working in wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're going to get someone that's going to really love what you do and someone that's going to be growling about it. And we have to come back to the middle and go, I have to listen to myself. I have to trust myself here, because that's so important that I do. And not be swayed either way by the praise or by the criticism, because if you listen to either of those for too long, you will get blown way off course and you'll crash on the rocks and you won't get up again for a very long time. So that's really about it. I think I've finished everything that I wanted to say. I said a lot. The blog that I read to you is on my website under Write from the Heart. It's in the blog section, and you're welcome to go read it if you want to. I think the piece that's of most value and most interest to me is the beautiful piece by Thomas Banyaka Senior. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Oh, we've got an angry face. Who's that? And it's like, that man with such wisdom, such incredible wisdom, and a vision of who we are and where we're going and where we're going to go. If you think anything about reincarnation at all, if you think about the fact that you might come back or do this again or whatever else, think about this. Oh my goodness, there's lots and lots and lots of things here. Sorry, I've missed them. Let me have a look. Who have we got? Go back a bit. Who have we got? We've got Joe. I'm into that. Yes, of course. Hello, David. My cousin David. How you doing, darling? Oh, wow, to hear you say you want to come back. I've been saying that for years, that this is my last life. Ha ha, silly me. I've heard lots of people say to me, oh, this is my last life. And I just go, oh, okay. I just did the rolling eye emoji and go, whatever you say. But it might be. Who knows? It won't be your last life. You might not come back here for a while, but you certainly won't be going nowhere. Tina. Hi, Tina. Yeah, Joe said, I find technology is starting to remove the ability to think for ourselves. Yeah, it is. It is, if you let it. Yeah. Royden. Hello, Royden. I'm a real psychic. Well, thank you, dear. Yeah. My kids will tell you that I am something. Yes, I am. You know what used to happen with my kids? I'll let you know a funny weird thing. My kids would be in the other room when they were little, and I'd be in the kitchen, and I would hear them. They were going to come and ask me for something, and they'd walk into the kitchen, and I'd go, no, you can't have that. And they go, what? And I'd say, you can't have, and I would name whatever it was, and they go, how'd you do that? And I go, I'm a wizard and witch. I can hear you. And they go, ooh, that's not very nice, is it? So, yeah, lovely to have you here. Carolyn, fear versus love. Yep, fear versus love. And Royd and James, please don't go. Please don't go. Well, I'd love to stay, but if you've got any questions, you got anything you want to say, come on. Put it out there. I'll stay here for another few minutes. I'll stay here till 8 o'clock. How about that? And you can all comment if you want to. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. I love your comments. So tell me some more. What do you want to talk about? I've got, there's John Wall test. I have folders full of stuff that I have got to talk about. And yeah, so much that I don't even know where to start, actually, which is really interesting. The other thing that I do is I'm a funeral director. Okay, so I can't talk too much about that because there's a lot of privacy issues and lots of families. But I will say this. One of the things that's really interesting to me is about how we deal with death. And I believe that how we deal with death is in direct relation to how we deal with life and how we see our lives and how we view life. And once we get a bit more, a bit better at looking at who we are and why we're here and what we're here for, I believe that we'll get better at dealing with death and dealing with the pain of death and losing someone. Don't get me wrong. I am very sad about losing someone. It's like it's a year to the day tomorrow since my mum died, and a dear mum. And you know, it's a year. I can't believe that it's a year. It's just gone so fast. And she was 93, and you know, she had a bit of dementia and she was blind and so on. But she was my mum, and she's our nan, and you know that. And I'm a funeral director, and you know I see this all the time, and I go through this with families, but when it's your own, it's a totally different thing. And you know I miss her, and I wish I'd go and see her, and so on. But I talk to her. I talk to her spirit. I talk to her all the time, and I say, oh, don't look at that, mum, or you know, gosh, mum, I wonder what you think of that, or whatever. I constantly talk to her about the things that I would love to share with her. And that really helps me to feel like I can still talk to her. So I think what I might do one night is let's have a talk about death, shall we? And one of the Soul's Journey podcasts that I have on Podbean, it talks about that. We're talking about death and about, you know, how we die and why we die young, and why and what happens to us, and how we have many outs, you know, throughout our life that we can go. Some of them we know about consciously, and some of them we don't. Like some of them you just have those things where you go, phew, that was close, as you narrowly miss being hit by somebody.
Go listen to it. It's free.
Yeah, go and listen to it. It's free. Go to Podbean. I'll put the address up for you. Royden, I'm a very, very spirit. Been fighting all day with a time warp. Heaven, hell, demons. That spirit is all in me. Some locked bedly. I have so many things taken from me. Well, Royden, I would say, from my experience, hi Paula, that you're dealing with the past life stuff. That's what you're dealing with. I would think that's what's happening. All right. I can't say that for sure unless we, at some stage, could do a past life regression with you, which is one of the things I do. But, you know, people who struggle in that way and locked up mentally, often have lots of past life stuff and they brought it with them into this life, and it's like it plays havoc in their head. But I can't say that for sure, but that's what it sounds like to me, just from what you've written there, or the time walk. Yeah. And look, what is time? You know, we think that time is linear, that, you know, it's beginning, a middle, and an end, but time actually doesn't look like that at all. Time isn't like that. And that, you know, as far as these past lives and things are concerned, I had a lady who came. I've just popped up my Podbean, or John has just popped up the Podbean URL into the chat. So if you want to go and have a look. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So time is this. It's not a linear thing. It is actually we're kind of all living everything out all at once. I had a lady come to me many years ago who had a choice of where she could go in her past life for a life. She could have gone to one particular place where she would have had a wonderful life, really happy, wonderful, with all these great people. She had a choice of a life that would have been a really horrific life, and she would have had a lot of things happen to her, so she worked through some karma. And then she had this life, and this life, she said, was because she needed to go through this life so that when she got to that life, that was a beautiful life, that she would understand it and enjoy it and have a better understanding of herself and her soul. And I think that that's it. If you're in this life and you're struggling and you're really fighting with yourself, just remind yourself that you chose to be here, that you knew what you were coming to, and that, you know, once you start to accept that, once you start to take that on, even just as an idea, see what happens, because it certainly changes the way we look at our life now, that we knew what we were coming to. You have lots of prophecies by the look of it. Why do spirits touch you physically? I've had that. Freaks out of me, Tina. Well, Tina, it's because they're trying to get your attention, dear. That's why. And yes, it does freak you out, because, you know, our idea of spirits is kind of the sheep with the eyes in it, or the spooky poltergeist or whatever. And that is, you know, that's not entirely true. And you know, spirits are very benevolent and be very benevolent. I haven't had a bad experience. That doesn't mean to say other people haven't, but I haven't, touch wood, and everything else. But, you know, perhaps just stop for a little bit and just sort of ask them to do it in a different way, or to get your attention in a different way, or ask them to do it and you won't react like that, and you'll just try and, you know, have some kind of communication with them. When we're trying to communicate at that level, and this is the same process that I use for light path journey therapy, is that I say to my clients as I take them in, you can't use your eyes and your ears and use the senses that you use as a human operating in this world. They don't work. If you're trying to see with your eyes, you'll be looking at in the back of your eyelids, so don't go there. We have to use that quiet part of ourselves, that sort of inner eye part of ourselves, and our senses, you know, our more auric field, our energetic self. That's the best way I can describe it in layman's terms. I'm sure someone might have a better description than I have, but that's how I see it. I get them in my mind's eye, and I get the messages, and they're not. I've had a couple of times where I've had the experience of someone actually, I've heard the words outside of my head. That was pretty freaky. But mostly I get them inside myself, and it almost feels like a thought, but it's not a thought. It feels different than a thought of my own thought. It feels like something else. John says it goes through his head, and it feels like that. So yeah. So just give that a go. Try it. See, just sit down quietly and see what happens, and see if you can communicate with them on a different level, other than having to touch you and frighten you, because that's not what they want to do. Or if you jump out of your skin, maybe they like the idea of you jumping out of your skin. Maybe there's someone in spirit that wants to get, you know, let you know that they're there and that they're okay, because that's really what they want to do. They just want us to know that they're okay, that they're all right.
And that we're okay.
And that we're okay. That's true, John. You know, that we're okay. It's just that there's this barrier between us. And when we sort of can thin the veil between us by quiet and inner reflection and meditation and so on, then they can talk to us without having to jump out of our skin or catch glimpses. I catch glimpses out of the corners of my eyes or get little speckles of light around the place. Oh, hello. And do you see that? Did you see that? Yeah. Hello. I get little things like that and like that just happened. Did you see what just happened? Did anyone see that? That was pretty interesting. I get things like that kind of, you know, or feelings. I get a feeling. I was like, oh, hello. When I was doing funeral celebrancy, before I kind of really understood this a lot more than I do. I didn't understand it that much back then, but I used to get really sick. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I spent this time in bed and I'd be like, what's wrong with me? Until I figured out, and with the help of a couple of other people, that you needed to learn not to be frightened, Tina, that I was actually picking up the people who were dead and what they died of. No wonder I was sick. Ugh. It was it was yucky. And I'd be like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel I got this wrong and that wrong. And then I learned to actually, before I went into a family, I just kind of put myself in this egg thing and a little door, and I'd go inside and I could see out and everyone could see me, but it was just like my protection to sort of go, nope, you can't come in here. And I was thinking today, because John had a wee experience like that today, I was thinking today of a time that and you also pick up on other people around you, just living people. I went into Pack and Save in Northlands in Christchurch one day, and I was going through the turnstiles, and I got this incredible sharp pain right through my leg, through my knee, and I was like, someone has stuck a hat pin through my knee, and I was like, yow, and I yelled out. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then I went, that's actually not mine. That's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. And I went, okay, I don't know whose this is, but you can have it back. Thank you. It just went bang, just like that. And I'm very sensitive, and I'm sure you are too. Very sensitive when I go places. I have to be mindful of. One way to do this, I'll give you a couple of tips. One way to do this is that when you're feeling okay, give yourself a body scan. All right, start from the top of your head and scan your body. Go right through. I was told to do this. Okay, I know it keeps doing it again. Going through, doing a body scan from top to toe. Okay, and go right. This is how I feel now. This is my normal feeling right now. And then as you go around the day, and thank you to the person who gave me this, as you go around your day and something happens, you go, oh, I've got a pain in my shoulder, and then you have to stop and go, is that mine? Does that actually belong to me? Oh, I've got something going on in my head. Is that mine? Maybe it's not. These things might not be yours. You could be picking them up from someone else. And so we kind of think, oh, I don't feel great. I was feeling all right for a while, and now I don't feel good. Could be the person standing over there in the queue at the supermarket. It could be someone in your office. It could be a person you passed in the street and you've just picked up something that you just walked through in their energy, as we walk through each other's energy all the time, and you've picked it up. And so, you know, be mindful of that. And that's becoming more self-aware of you and what's going on for you in any given minute. And I've had to really watch myself with that, because I can pick up on it, and I can pick up on other people's stuff even though they're not anywhere near me. I pick up on their energy or whatever else. Okay, so you do that. I hate hallways. Tina, you hate hallways. Do you mean hallways as in what, in your house? And Carolyn, you do that. You pick up stuff, people's stuff? Yeah, I bet you do. So you hate hallways. Where do you hate hallways, Tina? And you're a weathered sailor, Royden. You're so intrigued. I bet you are a weathered sailor. That's exciting, isn't it? It sounds really exciting. And Joe, you saw it. Yeah, it's happening. It's been happening a few times. The little flashes going on. So yeah, tell me. You hate hallways. Why do you hate hallways? And has anyone had any of those experiences? You go out in houses. Why is that? I wonder why you hate hallways in houses. Have you had an experience? Even from Invercargill, an old war dog. Way! My rallies are all from Invercargill and Stewart Island. My mum was born there and my great-grandparents were from Stewart Island. It's a great place. I was down there a wee while ago, a few years ago, and did some light path journeys. I've been asked if I wanted to go back down there and do some more recently, so you never know. You might see me down there, Rawdon. Invercargill, old war dog. Do you roll your R's? My mum still did. My mum still rolled her R's even after all this time. Okay, so, all right. Well, look, I'm going to have to go, folks, because it's 8 o'clock and, yeah, I get so detached from reality, end up disoriented, lost. Okay, well, sometimes we just have to keep working on, either we're grounding ourselves, just bringing ourselves back to ourselves and being here in our body in this one, calling ourselves home, Lord, bringing ourselves back to this one. This body is the one we chose to be in, so calling yourself back in here, all right? All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap it up. We've got things to do, all right? And I'm just starting to ramble. And I found out someone shot in the drive. Oh, at your house? Oh, my God, Tina. Okay, I'll come visit you. We'll sort it out, okay? Personal message me, all right? All right, everyone. Oh, no angry faces allowed here. All right, everyone, I'm going to say goodnight to you now. Good night, everyone, and thank you so much for being with me. 7 o'clock next Tuesday, be here or be square. And if you've got anything you want to talk to me about, personal message me and we'll have a conversation. All right. Go well and good night.